The top story to me that is of interest this morning is the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. signing. And they had said they weren't going to talk in season. They lied. They did talk in season. They get the deal done, 14 years, $500 million. We knew once that the reports came out that Vlad turned down $500 million, that both the Mets and the Yankees would be long shots at that point. Yep. Initially going in, I'm thinking, oh, man, he's going to hit free agency, not happy in Toronto. They couldn't come to an agreement. And I was thinking between $400 and $500 million. He ends up getting $500 million for the Blue Jays, who he's more valuable to than anybody else. I think a good deal for him, but what does this mean now for the Mets, and more specifically, Pete Alonso moving forward?
Well, I think it means possibly some good stuff for Pete. It won't mean anything if Pete doesn't have a good season. Like, I know he's off to a good start. It's great to see. Pete's got to continue to bang and continue to do damage. Now, I was thinking about the same thing. So I never thought the Yanks would be a serious player for Vlad Guerrero. That's more Tucker, when we'll get to that in a little bit. I never thought the Mets would have the appetite just because of the bigger, Lindor, of course, Soto now as well. I gave the Mets more of a chance to maybe make a run at Vladdy than the Yankees, but I didn't think they would. So
people thought the Red Sox, maybe, if not the New York teams, remember the Red Sox would be one of those teams. Obviously, that's off as well.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, somebody had to take Toronto's money. I don't think he was going to get a better deal elsewhere. I don't think it's going to age very well. I don't think that 14, forget about the 500, 14 years. What is Vlad Guerrero going to look like in 14 years? But specific to Pete, the question, I don't think the question is, would the Mets be open to renegotiating at some point during the season? I think that they might be amenable to it. I think the question is, would Pete and Boris be open to it?
I don't know why either side would. What do you think would be the benefit for the Mets? Why at this point? See, the Mets have clearly operated one way. Let the market dictate what you're worth. The market said Pete Alonso was not worth $30 million a year, but the Mets gave him the $30 million a year to bring him back. He's more, just like Vlad to the Blue Jays, Pete's more valuable to the Mets. Now, though, with Vlad off the board, I would think Pete has a little more leverage in that the Mets were going to pivot to try to go after Vladimir Guerrero Jr., if not Pete Alonso. I'm talking about for 1 year, for this year. But now that's not even a possibility any longer. So who the Mets going to go get to play first base, and who do the fans want? And if Pete has a monster year, he then has leverage. So if I'm him, I play it out. And if I'm the Mets, I also play it out, because unless you're getting a value, which you might get anyway based on the market, what's the advantage that the Mets would have?
Well, the advantage is a clear head moving forward this year from Pete Alonso's perspective. And listen, he seems to be operating quite freely now anyway, better than a year ago. And I think a lot of wires were crossing, and he was just, he didn't handle the contract stuff very well. Is there a clear benefit now? Well, I mean, the only thing would be if you were to do it fairly soon. And listen, again, I don't mean 8-9 years. I mean in that 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, which I probably still wouldn't do. Maybe in that window, it's appealing to Pete, where you can say, okay, I don't think Pete wants to be anywhere but here. He loves being a Met. I think that's very apparent. The Met fans love him.
You don't think he just wants the most money?
You know what? I don't. I don't get that sense. And it's, at the end of the day, we all want to make and maximize our earning powers. I get that.
Why did he turn down that offer years ago then?
Well, because I think the market, number one, he was younger. The market was very different. I think it hadn't yet established this, I don't want to say a bias, but certainly working against aging right-handed first basemen who are very good athletes. Well, I'm not saying he's looking to get raked over the coals and not get a good deal.
I'm not knocking him.
No, those are good questions.
Yeah,
honestly, I get you. Those are good. Like, if he's not looking for the most money, why would he have turned down the deal? Why would he go with Boris, who always chases every penny? I got you.
Those are just the facts.
Yeah, no question. Fair questions, good volley points, there's no doubt. But I just think, I would almost love, he's not going to do this. I would love to see Pete really grab control of his own steering wheel and say, you know what? I don't like the way it went with Boris a year ago. I'm moving on from Scott Boris. And then maybe that opens up a different dialogue and a different tone with the Mets. But
I think it would.
It might. I don't think he wants to be anywhere else. I think he wants to be respected financially and respected by the Mets. And let's face it, the contract that he just signed is not a great sign of respect. And the fact that they let him out there for others to sign him so late in the offseason was not an outward sign of respect for the Mets to Pete. So
I mean, he's getting $30 million, which was the most prior to the Vlad deal.
The 1 year, I get it, but still, come on. So he's played, 7 or 8 games as a 30-year-old first baseman who's going to, break power records for the Mets, and he had to stand in line and wait for the last second to get a contract. It doesn't seem congruent with what he's done as a Met so far. I'm not saying he's an all-time. So I'm not saying that. What I am saying is he looks comfortable. He looks good behind Soto. The Mets look good, and I believe Pete wants to stay. Get it done.
Well, I still, though, would not negotiate in season. And also, Pete's going to turn down that $24 million, which is the player option. And even if he doesn't have a monster year. If he has a monster year, then he's definitely turning it down. But even if he doesn't, I still think he's going to turn it down and try to get at age 31.
What, 3 years or something?
Well,
maybe.
Try to get a little bit more financial security. You can't keep kicking it down the road. At some point, he's going to have to get a 4 or 5 year, whatever, 3. So if the Mets came to him and said, all right, we'll give you 5 years. And remember, I was throwing around the numbers. I was saying the Mets just give him 140 for whatever it was, 4 or 5 years for $140 million before the season and be done with it. They did not. So let's say he gets $25 million for 5 years. That's 125 on top of the 30 this year. That would have eclipsed the deal that he turned down if you factor in what he got last year as well, or at least would have been similar.
In the neighborhood.
So I think we're looking at that now. Maybe he gets a little bit more than that. Would you give him $30 million a year for the next 5 years?
I wouldn't be in a rush to do it. I would be in a rush to maybe have the conversation. So I just want to get back to when you said that. Do you think that it's more that the Mets shouldn't do it or that Pete shouldn't sign it if the Mets presented him with something interesting?
From Pete's perspective, I think it depends on what the offer is. If they came to me and I'm Pete, and they say, we'll give you 5 years, so I guess it would be this year plus 4 more at $30 million a year, you're going to get $150 million total. I don't think he's going to beat that. So,
I don't either.
Okay,
no way.
Now that to me is the Mets being gracious because you're giving him 4 more years at $30 million a year. It's still less than Vlad, but also Vlad's way younger. Obviously, Vlad got the long term. Pete's probably thinking he's worth $200 million. I don't think he's going to get that.
No.
Okay, so if you're asking me if I'm Pete and the Mets say we'll give you 4 more years, let's rip up the opt out, guaranteed 4 more years on top of this year at roughly $30 million a year, gets him to $150 total for what would be 5 years. That's the deal that I think I would have offered before the season anyway, or close to it. If I'm Pete, I accept that. If I'm the Mets at this point, I would just let it, what do you think the market's going to do? Do you think the market is going to say that Pete Alonso is going to be worth $40 million a year, $35 million a year? And if so, for how long? And if he really does want to be back, then why am I the Mets in a hurry to get the deal done now when I could just let this play out and let the market dictate it and then say, okay, here's what the market says. They say you're worth 180, we'll give you 200. The market says you're worth 140, we'll give you 160 or 150. You know what I mean?
I do. It's bad timing for Pete. I mean, really, timing is everything, and I think some of these contracts that are out there are just ridiculous. I think including Vlad Guerrero. I think Pete's been penalized for a couple of things here that we've discussed a million different ways, but I think that when I look at the Mets and who's in the system and, who could play first base for them down the road. And from Pete's perspective, who would really want him and value him? I mean, I'm not saying there wouldn't be teams that want him. I'm saying that would value him at some ridiculous rate that we all know he's not going to get. So, I mean, how long are we going to keep dating here? Like, how many dates? This is my point. How many dates do the Mets and Pete Alonso need to have before they realize it's pretty good marriage?
Right, but also, let's not forget that we're looking at it right now through a 9-game sample where he's at his apex.
Understood. Which is why you don't do it now.
Well,
maybe you figure it out in 3, 4, 5 weeks, start the convo.
If he goes the other way over the course of the next month and a half, now you know what the ceiling, what the floor is anyway for Pete. He's still going to hit home runs. But if he looks like he did the last 2 years, are we saying lock him up for 5 years? See, I would be comfortable. That's why I said from Pete's perspective, I would do that. And if I'm the Mets, I just let it play out because what's the worst that could happen? Pete has a monster year, and you let the market dictate the price. And if he really does want to be back, and he says he does, then they'll figure it out, even if they have to pay a little bit more than market value. That's what they've done to keep their guy.
Here's the other thing I think that the Mets do need to incorporate, Sal. There's going to be a strike. There is going to be a prolonged labor strife.
You think this Vlad deal hurt that? Because I was reading somewhere that it's the Vlad deal would be something that would push a labor dispute.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Okay.
I listen. I'm not piped in. I did see the same stuff.
Right.
I don't know enough to really say I agree or I don't. I don't.
Why are you saying strongly?
Well, because think about this. If you expect to have a long layoff in 2027, which I do, and I've said that for a while here on the show.
Right.
I said that going back a couple of months. Like, I think the baseball that we get to watch every night now, I think the baseball that we get to watch every night next year, I think so soak it in is what I'm saying. It's going away for a while. So if you think that it's going to go away, and I truly do, I would put money on a long layoff here in 2027, then why not just get it done and let an in his prime Alonso and an in his prime Lindor and in his prime Soto just go to work unfiltered, no heaviness in the head, no contract disputes. Hey, guys, you got this year, you got next year. 2027 will be compromised. The Mets won't pay it if there's a strike anyway. If nothing's going on, you're not getting paid. So I don't think that it would be a financial handcuff, and I think that I don't see any other great options for the Mets at first base. I really don't.
But let me ask you it this way. Do you think, because we've had this conversation throughout the course of the horrible negotiations in the offseason with Pete, do you think the Mets were the ones that were the problem here?
No, I don't think that the Mets were the problem.
Me neither, because they've even said, these negotiations were harder than Cohen came out and said that, which makes me think they were looking to get something done. They were also saying, we want him back. They were just letting the market dictate things. So I don't know the exact offers. I'm assuming we do know the one that he turned down years ago. We do know that it's different. Okay, fine. I don't know what the Mets presented this go around. What were the best offers? But Pete didn't have any other options. So what are the Mets going to do? Just say, hey, you're a nice guy. You're going to break the home run record. Let's just give you $200 million when you're not worth. It would be stupid business to do that. I like what you're saying. Just get it done because he wants to be back. The fans want him back. He's a good fit for the team. He's going to be a productive player. But at what cost? And I think that we already had this conversation in the offseason.
We have. That's why this is I've said many times, I think this is one of the most, if not the, I don't want to be too hyperbolic here, but when you incorporate all the stories the last 20, 25, 30 years, I think that this probably equates and equated to, and maybe will equate again, to the trickiest negotiation for any New York star that I can remember. You think about this. Obviously, Judge was getting paid. Obviously, Patrick Ewing was getting paid. Don Mattingly was getting paid. All the great Rangers, Shesterkin, they got that deal. Boy, the Rangers, wow. They got that deal done. But Alonso, he's
But is he on that level?
He's not a perfect player, so he's certainly a tick below that. I get that. But all of the negotiations and all of the money that we have in this city, right, that's the guy who just can't carve out a lengthier contract. It's odd. I don't know why.
All right, let me ask you this.
Think about this, Sal. He's low maintenance. Fans love him. He's a consistent run producer, and he's not over the hill.
Right.
Those are things
but I don't think it's the Mets that aren't paying him. As a matter of fact,
did they offer him 3 years?
Again, they offered him the long-term deal years ago.
Years ago, though.
And then I don't know what all the offers were this year. All I know is, at the end of it, the Mets 2 years, $54 million with the opt-out after year one, which paid him the highest paid first baseman in the sport. That was clearly the best offer.
It was, because I think it's safe face based on the AAV. If the Mets offered him a 4-year deal and he turned it down, I'm on Team Mets.
Okay.
Even if it was a 3-year deal, Team Mets.
But what is the market saying? We know what the market says, and then the question is, well, now we know that Vlad kind of reset the market, at least for first baseman, although he's 26 years old. Alonso is 30 years old. What does Vlad's actual signing mean? And we also know that he got $500 million, which he's not really worth that, but he's worth it to the Blue Jays. Does that impact Pete's market at all? Do you think teams now next year, assuming Pete hits free agency, assuming he has a monster year, are they going to look at him differently and say, you know what, we'll give this guy $200 million?
No, I don't think teams will. I think the Mets could. I think a singular team could. I think the Mets could. Listen, I don't know how much of the Vlad being unsigned and being a possibility, being a threat, maybe dissuading Pete from getting too aggressive, whatever. That's gone. So that is one variable that they can only they can't chase that. They can't dangle that in front of Boris. Hey, listen, we want Pete, but if it doesn't work out, we go kick the tires on Vlad as well. Nobody's taking that Toronto money yet. Maybe he'll take the Mets money. So I think that it does change certainly the pool of options, and I think the fact that Pete looked so comfortable early this year, it should, and I'm not saying tonight or tomorrow. I get it. It's a quick start. I understand you want to see a little bit more, but he's done enough here so far in his first 6 or 7 years. it wouldn't be an egregious mistake, put it that way. There are contracts that are bad. I don't think there's anything the Mets could do with Pete because they will not be reckless or cavalier. That would be a bad contract.
Yeah, and just to bring it back to the beginning point, I don't think there's any need for either side to start negotiating now based off of Vlad's contract, where if I'm Pete, I'm letting it play out, and I'm going to let the market again dictate where I'm at. And maybe now the other thing is, Vlad's off the table for the Mets, but Pete's off the table for the Blue Jays.
Well,
they got their guy now. They're not going to spend $200 million on Pete Alonso. So will there be another team out there in free agency that's going to be different from where we were a year ago, where it seemed like all along the Mets and Pete were the perfect fit? Nobody else, for whatever reason, wanted them. Is there going to be one other team out there that's going to be willing to pay and get his market up to where then he could decide potentially between coming back to the Mets or going elsewhere? I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. But if I'm him, I still let it play out, especially if the Mets aren't willing to give me at least $150 million for the next 4 years.
The way you lay it out, I get it. Practically, it makes sense. But if you're Pete, you want to go through this again?
I don't know.
You want to go through the charade again? He's going to blast by Strawberry by the All-Star break. All right, he's going to be the all-time Mets home run leader. He's a flawed player. We know that. But he fits, and it looks like he fits even better with Soto.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying I'm just going to say, oh, wow, oh, my God, let me give you 7 or 8 years. Things haven't changed that radically. I'm not giving you 7. I'm not giving you 6. I'm not giving you 5. But in terms of having a legitimate, meaningful conversation about 4 to make you a lifelong Met, I would do that.
Yeah, and also I think Pete is more valuable now. Even if it's 9 games to me, he did something that I didn't think he could do. And that's show that he was his old self again, that he wasn't going to be mentally torn or weakened by what happened the last 2 seasons, by what happened in the offseason. He looks more comfortable and confident, even in the field. Forget about just the numbers.
He's made some good plays already.
It's not about the number. He just looks like he's a player that's on a mission. On a mission for what? I don't know. And if I were willing to give him 140 before the season starts, I'd certainly be willing to give him 150 now. I just don't know if you're the Mets, if you would want to go way beyond that. We'll work into the Yankees to the conversation as well, because the Vlad signing does impact them, even indirectly, where it's not just Vlad to the Yankees or it's not Vlad to the Red Sox, but also what it means for Kyle Tucker and potentially him re-signing with the Cubs or him hitting the free agent market as now being the prize free agent.